Staff member. I'm Brian Krasner from the Daily News.
And I'm Randy Dieter from the Tribune Review. And I'd like to point out that staff member is not me.
I'm Ginger Burzon. I had nothing to do with that staff member getting pregnant, so don't write any letters.
You are the one. Why did you think you weren't here last week?
No.
He was out getting blood samples.
I was running like hell.
I think we have one more person. Mr.
I don't want to be
Cometti.
introduced this week.
Please step forward.
I would just like to stand back in the shadows of Pro Wrestling Review, which is currently in the other room with the treadmill. So.
Well, you know, we should.
Have a treadmill? I miss a week.
Hey, that pregnant woman has to run on something.
Oh boy.
I was going to say something about the volume, but I'm not. I'll wait till later in the show. When we're
Would you say, Brian?
So we've gotten some emails from people asking about the volume of the show, and I just want to say that we've done everything we can. You can call the network, it's WBGN, but when you call, make sure you talk really loud. Really loudly, I should say.
Because the guy running the soundboard is apparently sleeping. So that's why you need to wake him up. And
yes, call and speak loudly into the other end of the phone because the volume apparently is a problem. We're going to talk about some other things other than the technical aspects of the show, although I do believe you're doing a PowerPoint slide later on it.
I have graphs and charts.
You too?
Good, good. Well,
I have flip charts, in fact.
it's more of a point-counterpoint type of thing. It's going to be really interesting. And gather all the kids around because it's like an educational experience. I think we got a grant for it.
I'll be leaving during that segment.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. We're going to talk about a variety of different items, such as this past week's Raw, the upcoming debut of the NWO, with some guys named Hogan, Hall, and Nash. Apparently they're not going to have first names anymore. They're going to be like Chuck and Billy.
Those are first names.
What did I say?
Chuck and Bill. I understand.
Oh, yeah, okay,
I get, you know, it's like the one name thing, like, you know, Cher, Sting, Bono. We know.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Bono, wow, this is the best 2-minute intro we've ever done. We have not talked anything about wrestling whatsoever, but we are going to talk about something wrestling-oriented, I'm sure, on this upcoming show, if you can hear us, if you can see us, if there's audio, if there's picture. We don't know yet. So, Brian, just go ahead and do something.
How about we get out of here?
That's a really good idea.
Regrouping may be nice. We're going to come back. We're all going to take 5 minutes and have a Kit Kat bar, and we'll be back right after this.
Mae Young, we saw it with Terry
Oh,
Rollins.
forgot about me, yeah.
Yeah, she gave birth to a hand because someone thought that was cool. I don't know who though, but it's just one of those things where obviously the crowd, the live crowd in Las Vegas, let them, the people know that they don't believe this angle. They just assume that it's either she's faking about it or it's just going to be someone else's kid. I don't know where they're going to really go with this.
I can explain the entire Mae Young angle to all the confused people out there, but even though we're on at 10 o'clock at night, I think we get thrown off the air, so I can't do it. But I know what it's about. I understand the angle. I had it explained to me because I didn't get it, but now I do. But that doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, I think we can just look back to the whole Tommy Dreamer, Raven, Beulah love triangle in ECW to get the answer of what's going to... Yeah, I mean...
Boy, that took a turn for the worst, huh?
Well, so did the angle, but... I think we can kind of look at that whole story to see where this whole thing's going. Triple H has a huge match coming up at WrestleMania. He's facing Chris Jericho, a person who's had well, I think he is. So a person who's had a lot of friction with Stephanie McMahon as time's gone on the past 2 years. So of course, it is only logical that they will have slept together.
Well, remember, I said a few months back, I said it's obvious that as much as they hate each other, they're going to end up together, and I think that's where this is leading. Or it could just be one of those, like Dallas, Bobby Ewing things where Hunter dreamt about her being pregnant and they'll just forget about it, a la Miss Hancock.
No. Him and 20,000 people in Las Vegas. Right?
Or maybe like Miss Hancock, she can have the baby in 2 months.
I'd like to reiterate the fact that to dream something up, you have to actually put effort into the story. And with the Miss Hancock thing, holy hell, that's a close-up of my head. Anyway, with the Miss Hancock thing, didn't she give birth to a whole bunch of promo pictures of Sean Stasiak in a crib or some crap like that?
Yeah, actually it was Mecca at the time.
Oh, God.
Why did they drop that name?
I don't know. It seemed like money to me.
It's like calling a guy Egypt. There's just money involved.
Well, we did have a China and an Asia, so.
Oh, boy.
There's money to be made on the continents.
Yeah, we don't have a Europe or, well, we had an old hair metal band, Europe.
Well, that's kind of getting off the subject a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
No, let's talk about Europe.
Well, anyhow, let's get back to the pregnancy.
Seeing as how Rat produces our show, maybe we could talk a little bit about Europe.
That's right. Well, maybe they can name the daughter Carrie. That's another.
Or Gary after Pitbull 1.
That was Pitbull 2, I think.
And why wouldn't
no, actually
want to
2
name
was
child
Anthony Durante. And don't ask
Well,
me
you're
why.
good.
The only reason you're gonna laugh, and I don't want to get too much on a tangent here. You're gonna laugh.
No more than we already
The
are.
only reason I even know that Pitbull 1 was Gary Wolf was when I ran that mile in high school for the presidential test. I wrote Gary Wolf's name on my hand to propel me through the finish line, so I'd finish it in 25 minutes. You know, break that record of Hempfield High School. So it is Pitbull
So if you ever
1,
want to run a
Gary Wolf.
13-minute mile,
Write Gary Wolf on
Wolf's
your
name
hand.
on your name.
Anyway, I'm done.
Right?
I think I am too.
I don't know.
That's a true
Let me
story,
just say
bud.
this.
I hate PWR at CS.com. We were talking pregnancy, Jim.
Yeah, I think if it does turn out to be Jericho involved in this, I think it's kind of sad in a way. Number one, you're heading towards the main event between Jericho and Triple H. Both of them are very talented and probably put on a good match without much build-up. And number two, the main event just happens to be at WrestleMania.
See.
And the fact that you have to throw in Stephanie being pregnant, which
This,
I have so many jokes I'd want to tell off screen.
but
I
this is
can't.
the WWF, though. They can't have a Hunter Jericho WrestleMania main event unless they throw a wild card in, or so they feel.
The
Rather than have
NWO isn't a wild card.
He's talking more specifically about the Jericho Hunter match. They can't just let them go out there and have a storyline about the match.
Why not?
yeah, what he said.
Well,
We've
we're
tried-
not. I'm not
they've-
questioning that. It's just, what I'm saying is the WWF won't let that happen. They don't feel Jericho's strong
But
enough.
this is the direction they've gone the last year, and it hasn't worked.
Well-
Adding things to matches and not letting wrestlers wrestle.
But I think this one's a little bit different. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the whole pregnancy angle is really hokey, and I don't think they need it. Well, they don't need it, but I think it is going to enhance the story. Unfortunately, because of how they've treated Jericho, he's not on the level of Hunter, and he's not on the level of The Rock and Austin. Unfortunately, that's the case. And I think it's going to take something just a little bit more to add to that story. I mean, you know, let's face it, Jericho bagging Triple H's wife is a pretty big deal. And in the eyes of the fans, it's going to be looked at as a pretty big deal. And
Oh, yeah.
you know what, for us talking about how they've built Jericho's title reign based on Ric Flair, there you go. Rick, you know, you bagged the other guy's wife. It's stupid, but I think it is going to enhance Jericho, and it's going to enhance his image. It's going to make him a bigger deal in the eyes of the fans. Instead of it being, well, Jericho's a good wrestler, and you know he's going to face Hunter for the title. It's going to be like Hunter's going to want to go out there and kill him.
Right.
And
I mean,
think it's gonna
I
help.
understand that, and I think the base fans will understand that, and that'll be more incentive to buy the pay-per-view. But from our standpoint, I think it's a shame that Stephanie McMahon has to be included somehow in this WrestleMania main event. And, you know, that's nothing against the pregnancy angle, which I thought Hunter did an excellent job with.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that a McMahon, again, has to be the center of attention, has to be involved somehow in the biggest match. And you go back again, and this doesn't have anything to do with McMahon's, but look at last year's WrestleMania. They had The Rock being managed by Deborah, Austin's wife. And they completely scrapped that because they realized it was stupid.
Yeah.
They could just have Rock and Austin go out and have a great match in front of 70,000 people. You don't need that extra, you know, she's my manager and she's his wife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm just, the McMahon thing having to be the center of attention is what I take from this.
Well, here's the thing, though. I guess people in the back think Stephanie has some weight to her as far as, you know, drawing power. When Jericho loses the title, and if the possibility exists that Stephanie goes with him, is that going to matter at all?
I think it's going to, because I think it'll keep Jericho in the public eye, and it's going to keep him. Any force that would give to pushing him down the card won't be there because the boss's daughter's with him. And I think that makes it a big deal. But you know, we're all talking about Jericho here, and the baby's going to end up being Gold Dust's. Or there's not a baby. I mean, we haven't even talked about that. What if there's not a baby? It could have just been one of those things that, you know, well, obviously there's not a baby, but...
Well, yeah, but from a storyline perspective, she may be doing this to Hunter to get sympathy, and since
Right.
he's been a little short with her in the weeks prior to her big announcement. But,
yeah, there's a lot of possibilities.
Definitely. Well, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more non-pregnancy issues from Raw, so please stay tuned. Anyway,
Now she's not.
I think if anyone else has anything else to say about that, I guess we can move on to another big announcement of sorts on Raw. Goldust revealed who he was channeling his aggression or man love to. And it happened to be Rob Van Dam, and I personally like this feud for a number of reasons, and I know Jim is waiting with bated breath to tell me why I'm not right.
No, I agree with you. I like
Oh.
this too.
We have
Because-
nothing to
because
talk
you know
about.
why? Because Goldust,
Heaven is crashing down on earth.
Goldust is going to get in the ring with Rob Van Dam. Goldust is going to be diving off a ladder, diving off the stage, diving off a top rope. He's going to
Who?
get in there and either brawl with him and keep Van Dam on the ground and teach him something, or, well, there's no war. That's what he's going to do.
Well, my reason for liking this feud was you have your number one babyface mid-carder, Rob Van Dam, feuding with a guy that just came back and is desperate not so much to find an identity, but to be established as a heel. So go after Rob Van Dam. Plus, we've never seen this feud before, and I'm always a big advocate of seeing Goldust versus Rob Van Dam or any other pair who haven't feuded together in the past.
I'm sure it'll be
There's
short
definitely
term,
something. Well, I think there's definitely something you can get out of this, seeing as that you
You're right.
haven't feuded at all.
But
ever.
I think the intent's going to be for hopefully Rob Van Dam learn something. And as I said, as we were talking about Henning and Goldust returning a couple weeks ago, Goldust is limited offensively in the ring. I think we can all agree on that. But he still has something. He still has something. He is what he is. And he's a brawler. He's a good heel brawler. And the thing he can get in the ring with Rob Van Dam with is if Goldust controls the offense like most heels do, he'll keep like I said, he'll keep Van Dam grounded. He'll teach Van Dam how to put over someone else's offense, and it'll just give Van Dam an idea how to go from beginning to middle to end in a match.
Well, let's not forget either, too, that if you look at our centerpiece on the table right here, here's a guy that Dustin Runnels wrestled in 1996 and had good matches with, and that's one of those things where you can look at Ahmed and see how sloppy he was, but Goldust was able to, take that away from him and give him a decent feud. And then, of course, he ruined his career from there on out, or maybe Farouk did. It's debatable.
Yeah, he ate his way to a movie career.
Yeah.
Well, factor in the fact that maybe Rob Van Dam, his interview skills being limited thus far, maybe Goldust would pull something out of him in the exchange back and forth between Goldust and Rob Van Dam, something that Van Dam, his interviews are lacking. I mean, there's nothing special. They're sort of stale. But maybe in going back and forth, maybe he might surprise us on the mic if he's given that opportunity.
Or learn, either way.
Yeah, the other thing I think is just good about Goldust getting this feud is that, just to kind of build on what you said, Rennie, is that it gets Goldust back in the public eye. It gets him in the ring with a guy that perhaps some of the people who have been watching ECW at the time of Goldust's character, whenever it was really big in the WWF, who missed out on him, are going to kind of get to learn who he was. And the other thing, too, is, Dustin Runnels is still a young guy. He's probably maybe mid-30s, if that. He looks to be in the best shape of his career, and he does have something to contribute. He's a decent worker when he's not Dustin Rhodes. I mean, when he's Dustin Rhodes, for some reason, it's like, I don't know. It's like when you take that Goldust makeup off and you put him in his regular ring garb. It's just, I don't know. There's nothing there.
I think it's the cowboy boots.
I think it is the cowboy boots.
Well,
but for Goldust, there's something special about him and about his character, and I think that mixing him with Rob Van Dam, I think is going to be a good idea, and you can get a couple months out of it that's going to benefit both guys.
I think it's one of those things where you can look at it and say, well, you know what? Here's a mid-card feud that can actually be built into something interesting instead of what we're usually used to seeing, and that's mid-card feuds that are thrown together and ended before they even get a chance to start.
And this is something that both of these guys can take this feud and go to something bigger.
Exactly.
It's not just something to bide their time. I mean, there's a purpose to it, and there should be a logical conclusion. And as long as they find that, this is going to be productive.
Well, just to finish up on my points, the Goldust character always methodical to some degree. That I'm sure that'll carry over into the ring as they wrestle. But another thing, the advantage of this feud is I think Goldust can take most of Rob Van Dam's offense as well. So the fans will really be able to, the fans who aren't looking for what we're looking for will still see all the flippity flops and frog splashes they want to see.
Flippity flops, huh? Aren't those what you wear on your feet?
Something like that.
Good enough for me. Anyway, well, maybe some more occurrences on this past Monday at Raw. We saw a couple more matches announced for the No Way Out pay-per-view. So we could either get into that or we could talk more about Europe.
Well, yeah, Europe's a hot topic right now, but
The group, not the country, obviously.
of course. I don't know. I guess we can talk a little bit about No Way Out. And Tom, I think you brought up a good point. Was the fact that obviously Kurt Angle's going to meet Triple H for the, or at No Way Out for his title shot at WrestleMania.
Well,
go ahead. I'll let you elaborate.
Two
on
things
it.
with this. I don't know how much time we have left in this segment, but one, this past Monday on Raw, Kurt Angle was in Vince McMahon's office, and this is a guy who's currently trying to kill his product, the WWF. Why Kurt Angle was in Vince McMahon's office? Maybe I'm being petty. I don't know. It just doesn't ring right with me. The other thing. When a guy wins the Rumble, he should be automatically guaranteed to go on to WrestleMania with that Rumble win in let's just say, protecting his title shot. I'm tired of seeing the title, or the guy that wins the Rumble, his title shot being compromised and him putting it up at the February pay-per-view. Obviously, I would hope Hunter's going to win it, but it demeans the winning of whatever. Wow.
It kills the credibility of the Royal Rumble. Why even bother having the 30-man elimination match if all you're going to do is at the February pay-per-view say, well, our Royal Rumble winner is going to fight this guy. And sometimes the WWF chooses to have that guy beat the Royal Rumble winner and go on and face. Vince McMahon was a perfect example.
Yeah,
he won the
right.
Royal Rumble, lost to Austin.
Well, that was a
Austin
different
gets the title shot.
situation, no.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is don't compromise the Royal Rumble and have this February pay-per-view match where, well, your title shot's on the line.
Well, the problem is there's a pay-per-view between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania.
They can just wrestle a singles match. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, they could do Triple H Kurt Angle without the title shot being on the line. Why can't you do that?
Here's what I would do. You have Triple H, you have Kurt Angle. I know we're in black and white. I'm going to say this real fast. You have them wrestle, no stipulations. Kurt Angle beats Triple H. Hunter goes on to WrestleMania, wins the title. Then there's a built-in opponent for Triple H to fight as world champion. Kurt Angle, I beat you before you won the title. Simple.
Too logical for me. So.
I know. Well, we're going to come back with more logic, so please stay tuned.
What the hell are we talking about? No Way Out.
Boy,
you can see how much wrestling I've watched. Over
We're
the last
kind of
2
like the
weeks.
Rams offense. We're just completely out of sync. We haven't found our rhythm.
Right. Exactly.
I've been sacked at least twice.
And like the Rams and Steelers both, I didn't show up last week.
Oh, no Steelers jersey this week, by the way, I noticed.
Well, I'm like every other jerk in this town. I'm jumping off the bandwagon.
At least you said it, and I didn't have to.
It's not actually true of kids, but No Way Out. It's coming up. Somebody save me, please. Tom.
I just realized we're going up
It's a
against...
pay-per-view. I don't think DirecTV carries it. We were talking about a couple of the matches before we went to break.
Yeah.
Another match that was advertised, The Undertaker versus The Rock, in a "You must respect me and quit singing and dancing and acting like a complete ass" match.
And speaking of complete asses, I think...
Sorry, I'm out of camera range here, kids.
There he
we
is.
go. Let's get a close-up of that.
Wow, that's
Tom.
great. Pro Wrestling Review, hard-earned dollars go to what you see here. Very interesting.
There it is. Sorry, it's not standing.
Come on,
very
Jim.
well. It's not, just like The Rock.
It's dead air time. What are you
There
doing?
Yeah, imagine that. It's not cooperating.
Here, put a couple... take this red marker, put a couple zits on his face.
I'll draw him a red mustache.
But-
That's actually an ice cream bar. I don't know if the people have known. Oh,
But
well.
anyway, the match was announced. The build-up for it so far has been good. Undertaker's all about respect. As we all know, kids, The Undertaker is all about respect. The Rock has none for anyone, including himself. Constantly refers to himself in the third person. So,
Wow.
and something caught my eye, actually caught my ear this past Monday on Raw, when The Rock was singing after his interview with, I believe it was Jonathan Coachman. Raw said something to the effect of, well, there he is singing again, and he has a main event match tonight. Maybe a little disgust on Ross's part. The fact that The Rock doesn't take anything seriously, but he can still pull out good matches, and I will give him that.
Jim Ross just seemed really cranky this week.
He did.
Yeah, it just.
Well, maybe he was a Rams fan. We don't know this.
Well, you know, his buddies Hall, Hogan, and Nash are coming back, and we'll get to them a little bit later. So I'm sure he's very happy.
Fired in 4 months, or at least out of the broadcast booth.
Yeah.
What, he didn't know they were coming back until last night, though? Oh my God, he was surprised like
He
the
thought,
rest of us.
he thought it was Scott Norton and Ice Train.
That would be cool if that was the three guys up there, Scott Norton, Ice Train, and Virgil.
Oh, that'd
Vincent.
be awesome.
Well, let's talk about another thing from Raw, that being the women's title match pitting Jazz against Trish Stratus, which, if you noticed a mild earthquake last night, it was because the match was actually pretty good. When they brought Jazz in the first time, and I had mentioned the first time they brought her in, she looked like Jimmy Snuka, and I don't really step back from it. I'm not being funny. She looks like, my God, like the hair and, you know.
Oh, no.
That's I hate PWR at CS.
She looks like Snuka. But anyway,
It's not a bad thing. Diving off cliffs, that's cool stuff. Of
well, there were other things about Snuka, but
course, there was no
anyway.
water when Snooker dove off, but that's another story.
But she has actually been a valuable member of the women's division. She's done quite well, and
And if you'll notice, she's the only person that wrestles Trish, which I think is lovely because that's the only match they actually have that they can give you or want to give you.
That's
is
any
Trish
good.
and Jazz. Well, I mean, you know, it's just one of those things where if you're going to be serious about it, let's get some more opponents in there for Jazz
Why are we
or
talking
Trish.
about it?
Well, you
Why
know,
are we
there's a good
Let
point.
me make a point first, Jim. I think we got to compliment Trish Stratus a little bit here too, because for all the backhanded comments we've made about her over the last year, she has actually come a long way wrestling-wise. And I know for all the 16-year-old boys who are sitting at home with, "Oh, drop your top," she can do more than that. So I think that's the thing that she's proved over the last year, and she's had quite a hurdle to climb over because that's all people thought about for a while with Trish Stratus. But she's actually a decent wrestler, and I think that she's not quite there yet, but maybe with a couple more months of in-ring work, I think she's going to be pretty decent.
Jim, talk to The Rock, not a word.
How much time do we have left? No. I just think calling Trish decent is kind of an overstatement. Yeah, she has worked
is
hard.
decent.
She has improved, but there's still a lot missing from her.
For God's sake, Jim, she's not
Oh,
friggin'
come
Lou
on,
Thez.
come
It's the
on.
women's division. She's
That's
competent.
the problem. She's she's
We all
competent.
can't be Aja Kong.
And she's the second best in the women's division as of right now. Put it that way.
Who the hell's the first?
Backhanded comment.
I'd go for, I guess, Jazz.
Lita.
Yes.
I was thinking more along the lines
Yeah,
of Harvey
Lita.
Whippleman, who currently, well, not currently, but did hold the women's title. The thing about the women's title is, okay, they had a good match this past Monday on Raw. Jazz won the title. It's going to be completely a moot point once they go back to the bunny snow matches or the pudding matches for the women's title. And
You're
the
right.
thing is,
So why are we even talking about this? It doesn't, I was actually going to rant on this later, but I'll just say it now.
Jim, we talk about it so we can be right 3 weeks from now.
Well, it's true. Here's the problem with the women's division. None of them can wrestle. None of them match up very well to even put on a decent match.
I will not
There's
have
no
you-
reason to talk about this.
Honestly-
none of them are going to get better.
oh, come on,
Forget it.
Jim, Lita can wrestle.
Jim, I don't disagree with you at all, but I think really what the women's division has become.
Oh my
is
God.
not- everything's okay. What the women's division has become, it's just become a break in action from watching, the guys wrestle. And I don't think it's meant to be, anything special. I think it's just meant to be something different for people to watch. I mean, either that or let's go get the Mexican minis back so Lawler can cradle them
Or
at the
do
announce
something
table.
like, build up your tag division or,
I'm
light
not,
heavyweight
I'm, that's,
match.
I'm not comparing it to anything else. I think it's just a change of pace, and I think we should
Well,
just
I'll
leave
give
it
you
at that.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
I mean-
Nobody takes
I don't
them.
think anyone's going to want to see the jumping bomb angels and Aja Khan. I mean, they don't want. If you want to really get into that, then there's probably another promotion in another place for that. I don't think the WWF.
Yeah, I mean the thing that the women do in the WWF is they're expected to go out there for 3 minutes, be the match that goes out before the main event, and as long as they can wrestle competently like they did Monday night, like Jazz and Trish Stratus both did Monday night, then that's all you can really ask for. But I think the other thing they've done with this thing that's made Trish and Jazz's feud effective is they've made it a serious feud. I mean, they've had Jazz attack Trish a couple times, they had her injure her hand, and
Which would all be great if they were serious.
Jim, I don't disagree with you. I'm trying to
another
say
point
this is
before we
why
head
this
out.
has worked, is because they've treated this the way women's feuds should be treated. And there's no
Well.
reason they couldn't do this with Jackie, with Lita, with Molly Holly, with some of the other women they have. But
Let's just end the topic now because it's not going to change and there's no reason to debate it.
okay, well, we'll see you. Screw the women's division, and
Why, Vince already said that.
well, we'll be back right after this to talk about the NWO, which apparently is for life.
The hell with the intro. Just do what you have to do.
See ya. No, okay, I'm going to read the questions from last week. Question number 1, who managed The Rock, the real Rock, Don Morocco in 1988? It was none other than the fashion plate himself, superstar Billy Graham.
Don't make fun of Billy Graham.
I said called him a fashion plate. That's
Just
a
because he wore tie-dyed blazers doesn't mean he's a fashion plate.
It's a good thing. Anyway, question number 2. Who interfered in the Vince McMahon-Steve Austin match at St. Valentine's Day Massacre in February '99? It was none other than Grizzly Adams himself, the Big Show, Paul White as they called him back then. Of course, Michael Cole didn't know who he was, but that's another story for another time. Question number 3. How did the WrestleMania 4 match between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant end? It was a double DQ when both chairs went ping. Number 4 from last week's show was, who did Sid Vicious beat to win his 2 WWF titles? It was Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, for all you other fans out there. And as Michael Buffer would say, Bret the Hitman Clark. So thank you. And Brian, why don't you tell this week's winner, Richard Conroy from Pittsburgh, what he's won?
Well, Richard, in case you haven't watched the show ever and have no clue what you entered into a contest for, I'll tell you. You win from Original Pizza Works in Dravosburg, and I don't think I need to tell you where that's at. 1 large pie with 1 topping, an order of chicken wings, and a 2-liter bottle of carbonated beverage, and they let you pick. They're that generous. And Joe Perry from Aerosmith will deliver the pizza, and he'll sleep in your basement.
And beg you for money for, well, never mind. Jim,
Well,
They don't force you to take the tonic water? I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
This week's question on the official PWR sort of clipboard. 1998 No Way Out featured Kane versus Vader. What was the match stipulation? Once again, 1998 No Way Out featured Kane versus Vader. What was the match stipulation? No, it wasn't the big wrench to the face as I thought it was. So.
now you're giving away too much.
Oh, now
Stop.
you've blown it.
Sorry. So, log on to ProWrestlingReview.com, Pro Wrestling Review at Lycos. Finish this up.
I shall. Go on ProWrestlingReview.com, answer trivia, don't push play, answer the thing on the website, this one for the show, send it in, ProWrestlingReview.com, self-promotion giant over here, and answer the questions. And for the hell of it, throw in a little bit about Aerosmith. We may just give it to you even if you don't win. So, anyway, with that in mind, good luck on the trivia, and we are expecting, I guess, to hear from you. Goodbye. Here this week. And we're going to talk a little bit about the NWO.
cattle? Did you say cattle?
What's the word I'm looking for then?
Kettle, like a pot,
The
right?
hell's the difference?
A kennel.
Kettle, it's
Cattle
all
or
the same.
grazing out in the fields.
All right, I will not be. Oh, forget it.
It's a caribou of fun.
Even better. Anyway, this past Monday on Raw, you saw the return of Hogan, Hall, and Nash. I don't know which one of you guys brought up. Apparently, they're not going by any first names this time, which is fine. And I'll tell you what, the WWF handled it the right way. A lot of debate over the internet about even showing a picture of them this early in the invasion angle, if that's what you want to dub it right now. But it gave the crowd a little something to maybe look forward to. It was alluded to the fact that they may be at the pay-per-view collectively titled No Way Out, or NWO.
Wow, how coincidental.
If you want to put that in your gizzard. So,
Well then.
Mr. Dickinson really has to start writing better lines here. The freaking teleprompter just broke down. There's lines from...
He's writing the placards as we go. It's kind of disgusting.
To you, Brian, I think it's good. Back to you, Tom. Anyway, I think it's a good idea to show Hogan, Hall, and Nash. Because there's a lot of fans out there that probably don't know a lot about the NWO. And I know that sounds kind of silly to say. But it makes it a point to say that the NWO is going to be these three guys and not like, I don't know,
But
John Nord.
Because John Nord. Talking about pulling a name out of the air.
Well,
Norwegian or whatever it is.
I don't have a hat, but there was the name.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's a question Ron and I talked about earlier this week. And this also kind of ties into, well, how long is this NWO angle going to go? How many people this time should be in the NWO? Obviously not the 50 or 60 that were in WCW.
They had a small village built in Atlanta for all the NWO.
Right, all those concession stands they broke down in those hardcore matches for their houses.
I think the problem with the NWO was that it was starting to be treated like it was its own promotion, and I think it can't be that in the WWF. It has to just be these three guys. Maybe you can add a few, like I think someone mentioned the Undertaker joining. I think that wouldn't be too bad. But it has to be a group, three guys that just wreak havoc on the WWF. And unlike the Alliance, where, if you were a heel, you had to be in the Alliance. If you're a face, you had to be in the WWF. You can't have that. You don't need all your heels jumping to the NWO. It's not a promotion. It has to be treated like a group of renegades that want to put the WWF out of business.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to build on that same way. But I was thinking on boards as the maybe 6. I mean, it depends on
Logically, put 6 in.
But yeah, like I said, it depends how long it goes, how long, who you're going to rotate in and out. But I just want to touch on that renegade image that you just mentioned.
Even though their combined age is 200.
Right, exactly. Actually, exactly. The Outsiders, the NWO, when they first started in WCW, had the gang mentality, attacking everybody. Almost like a, hit here, run, hit here, and run. Does Hogan and Nash still have it in them to do that?
You mean to walk?
That too, but I mean to have like the gang warfare, to go in, jump somebody 3-on-1, and run for the hills when they're ready to lock them.
These guys are crippled. I mean, yeah, they can.
But I don't think they can do it effectively.
Yeah, they can. I mean,
Jim,
it's not real. They can run if they want to run. If they have to run away, they're going to run away. I thought you knew.
No, but well,
the thing is,
you're breaking my heart here. No, but it's just one of those things where it's one of those aspects. It's one of those subtle things they have to do, and I doubt if they can do it successfully.
They can do it.
Well, it also depends on a lot of what the WWF has plans for them, and whether or not when Kevin Nash gets on the mic, if he's just putting over his FUBU shirt, if he's trying to get himself over as a heel, as the rest of the group should be, great. If he's just trying to get himself over as a face, like he did in WCW, as that cool heel, they're gonna fail again.
Yeah.
And albeit Hogan does gimp a little bit down to the ring, I still think he can hit and run effectively. The thing is, the whole image of the NWO, hitting and running, your heels, your faces in the WWF. That was also
when they were most effective when they were doing that, too.
Yeah, spray painting, as much as, that's been outdated these days.
And also by the same token, you can't have Kevin Nash and Scott Hall beat off like Lance Storm, Chris Jericho, and like 7 other guys, too.
Well, the thing of it is,
you can't have that either.
The NWO has to be the NWO, they have to come out, and Tom alluded to this about a Kevin Nash promo. You're either with us or you're against us. And the NWO has to come out and they have to take guys like The Rock and Austin and Triple H and beat them down. Because if The Rock doesn't, here he is. If this jerk-off does a nip-up and beats all 3 of them, you might as well just send them home.
You're right.
Because the NWO has to look strong at first and should stay strong. And, there's nothing wrong with The Rock beating somebody, but don't fend off the whole group yourself.
You're right. You're right. It goes both ways. Another question I want to bring up is, again, back to the NWO early days, the question always was, who's next? Who's going to next to join? Can they do it effectively in the WWF, and are they going to do it at all?
Well, I'll do you one better besides who's joining. How about past feuds with the first run of the NWO? The Giant, Big Show, whatever you want to call him, Dallas Page, were courted for the NWO. Big Show did join Page. That he was basically made out of the NWO. He was the only character to get over from the fact that he was fending them off. have a history, and I know the WWF frowns on history.
Well,
The
this
fact that
is-
the Big Show used to be in the NWO. Hey, you were with us. You still with us now. And then there's a feud right there for a
Yeah.
guy that's not doing anything.
I think those are the things you can't ignore. I think that, you can't ignore the Big Show's history with the NWO, and, even maybe the same thing with Dallas Page.
And
Maybe that-
you
maybe
can't
part of
discount
giving
Shawn
the
Michaels and
titles.
X-Pac either.
Right,
Those are two
exactly.
names too that, if they want to give Shawn Michaels another chance, I mean, that's totally up to Vince McMahon. He could easily say, Shawn, you've had your last chance. But if they choose to bring Shawn Michaels back, and if they choose to use X-Pac, they're perfectly built in for that group,
Right.
either to be with them or against them.
Exactly.
And if the WWF writers and Vince can't see that there's a problem. You have to be able to see that. You have to go back into history and say, this is what happened then, this is what's going to happen now.
Yeah.
They can't ignore it.
Along the same lines, building Dallas Page up in the first run, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Booker T to get that get a push into the upper echelon.
By joining the NWO?
Either way.
Well-
By either having him turn face and say, well, I saw you guys destroy my company, or
This is a
having
point
him
that I
join
made on
outright.
last week's show, was the fact that there's nothing wrong with people like Booker T or Lance Storm, and I can't reiterate this enough, joining the NWO. But in order to be perceived as legitimate members of the NWO, they have to be hanging out, and I don't mean hanging out like at a bar, I mean like hanging out backstage with Hall, Nash, and Hogan.
Exactly.
You can't
And-
send Storm out there to wrestle and go, well, we're going to have an NWO match, because WCW did it on Worldwide. Well, we're going to have an NWO main event. It's Vincent. He's not a member. He wears a shirt. He's not a member of the
and
group.
If they are going to do the beatdowns and whatever else, Lance Storm and Nash and Hall and whoever have to be
They have
in
to
the ring.
recognize him as a
Yeah,
member.
you're
They
right,
just can't
absolutely
say,
right.
here's our little buddy from Canada that can wrestle. Here's a shirt.
To build on those attacks for a guy in Rose for Black and White, to build on those attacks, I think you can't have the NWO attack guys like Lance Storm and like the smaller guys that are going to make their attacks look better. But you got to do it differently than WCW. You got to have the WWF guys run to the rescue. It can't be like the WCW guys saying, "No, they're just beating up a bunch of short Mexicans. Let's just stay back here." If those guys like Lance Storm and guys like that get beaten up, guys like Austin, Rock, and Triple H have to come to the rescue to say, "These are our guys," and you're not going to do that to them. And that is what's going to build the unity you need to make this successful. We're going to come back, and I think we're going to do some viewer mail, or we're just going to drink Coke. We're going to do one or the other. So we'll be right back after this. That email address is prowrestlingreview@mailcity.com. If you hate us, it's IHatePWR@cs.com. And we got some great letters, but in order to read the letters on the air, kind of try to keep them to a minimum if you can. Make your point. Get in and get out. We love the long letters, but they're tough to read on the air. This is a letter from Carlton F. from Pittsburgh. He says, I want to know, do you think Y2J would join the NWO? I think his character would fit good with the NWO. I also wanted to know why Nydia, the female Tough Enough champion, never wrestles. First of all, I don't think Jericho would be a good idea to put in the NWO. He's a strong enough character that he can stay on his own. I think if you put him in the NWO, he's going to get lost with guys like Hall, Nash, and Hogan. Now, on the other hand, I think a guy like Chris Benoit would be great for the NWO because he doesn't have much of a personality, and he's a guy who can kind of mix in with them, not have to really be, boisterous, and he can just kind of go and do his thing. As far as Nydia goes, I don't think she's clearly far enough along in the ring as Maven. As Maven at least can get in the ring and wrestle a decent enough match if he has somebody good like Jericho to get in there with. She's doing her time right now in the minor leagues. I think she's in Ohio Valley, but she's doing her thing. So I think it's going to be a little while before you see her wrestling on television. Of course, she probably end up wrestling on Raw next week and beating Jazz, but oh well. I guess you're up there,
That's my
kid.
cue, I guess. This one's from Rob. He goes on with several things. I'm going to pick out one that we can debate a little bit. Another easy move for WrestleMania would be having DDP versus Raven versus Chris Benoit for the European title. This could reunite the feud they had in the WCW days, and I'm sure it'd be a great match. I think the idea is there. DDP kind of seemed like he got a little elevated this past Monday. Raven really isn't doing anything. I suppose if you want to reintroduce him, this would be a good way to do it. And, well, if Chris Benoit is back by that time, also a good
I
way
don't
to-
think he will be.
No, kind of shoot that idea down. But I mean, even when Benoit comes back, I mean, that would be an easy way. Just reintroduce Chris Benoit and really give him a match that they'll be comfortable with and put on a pretty good show.
Well, guys like, I know Raven for one, they've sent some of those guys back down to their minor leagues. They're not demoting them, but because they don't have a role for them on television right now until the company's split, they're kind of doing their time down there just to keep fresh in the ring. So that maybe is a good idea for like SummerSlam.
Yeah, you don't want to push Benoit back into some. Not that the match wouldn't be good, but you don't want to really rush along something like that. You want to do it right.
Yeah.
But we got a letter from Matt G. Last week's show, we talked a little bit about Vince Russo and the viewer mail, and he mentions that myself, along with Tom, looked like we had something to say, but time ran out. So he wanted our opinions on Vince Russo. I don't know if you want to
Yeah, real quickly here. I think, Brian, you might even have brought this up last week on the show. Vince Russo is a booker is a very bad idea. Vince Russo is a TV writer. Crash TV writer is a great idea with someone above him to weed out the garbage. Remember last couple years ago, I believe it was on Valentine's Day. I don't know if this was Russo's idea or not, but he wanted to have two cool marry each other in the ring on Valentine's Day. And you have guys like, that could have been a McMahon idea, I'm not really sure. But you just have an upper authority in Vince McMahon to weed out the garbage, maybe inject some life into something and make it good. Russo knows TV, he can write TV, he can't book wrestling, and you saw that in WCW.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with Brian from last week and you right now, Tom, and I think that Vince Russo just had a guy above him, Vince McMahon, who knew how to channel his ideas in the right direction and learned how to, Vince McMahon would book the matches, Vince Russo would come up with some ideas, and like you alluded to last week, he had a lot of really bad ideas, but you know, to give the guy credit, he did contribute to the WWF during its high point, and he may or may not have been caught up in that whole ratings push by accident. You know, we'll never know that really, but the guy had some good ideas. But again, Vince McMahon was, you know, the brains behind the pen, I guess you could say.
I'm sorry. I just think to point out real quickly. Vince Russo as a magazine writer needs to be shot.
Well, you know, I think you make a good point about Russo being a TV writer. If you look at television writers, we'll take Chris Carter, for example, from X-Files. I believe he also writes the show as well as produces it. You know, you're writing a show and you're doing maybe 26 episodes a season. And, you know, it's in and out and stuff like that. But with the WWF, you're doing 52 episodes of Raw, 52 episodes of SmackDown. And I think the burnout fact it's sped along much faster. And I just think that TV writers eventually, when they're writing the same product, lose their effectiveness.
One other thing real quick. You had something
No,
to
I'm
say?
just going to say, not having said all that for all the times we do criticize Vince Russo, it's not to say he can't come back with Vince McMahon and maybe work the magic again. It's not impossible to think that.
It's hard to say. You know, Russo might have been in the right place at the right time. But one other thing real quick, we got a long letter from Jeff Navarro, and one thing that he mentions that I want to say is he talks about Triple H being the best wrestler right now in the WWF, and that's hard to disagree with. But he says Kurt Angle comes in a close second, and I really agree with Jeff on this point. I think you really can't say enough about Kurt Angle and what he does. He just seems like the kind of guy, he can go out there, have good matches with everybody, and he seems like a superstar who doesn't really get caught up in, you know, being a superstar. He'll do what's needed for the company. And the WWF doesn't take advantage of him for that, and in a sense they actually reward him with, you know, matches with Hunter and, you know, different things like that. But I just think you can't say enough about how important Kurt Angle is to the WWF.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, to close this out here, I got a little discussion from my section of the website, I believe, and the question was, what should the main event at WrestleMania be? And well, I got apparently I got something from Terry Bollea, Terry spelled wrong, obviously, from Venice Beach, California.
Oh, so it has
and
to be
from,
him.
And from the Repo Man, who's currently residing in hell, but I'm not going to get to those. On a serious one, that Jeff Navarro, I believe, if I'm mispronouncing your last name, I do apologize. No matter what the role the NWO plays at WrestleMania 18, the main event should be Austin Triple H. He goes on to say about when Hunter got hurt, Austin was there, involved, so to speak. When Austin got hurt, I believe, it's kind of a vice versa situation. There is great backstory there. But you have, in my opinion, and take it for what it's worth, you have to have Jericho in there. He is going to be a main eventer. He's still young. And for him to headline at WrestleMania is just going to propel his career further and further. For him to be wrestling Rikishi at WrestleMania,
Yeah,
I can't.
It's one of those things where everybody complains, we complain in the show, that they have to keep building new stars. You can't keep relying on the same stars over and over and over and over again. And this is the example of them not doing that, of them deciding they're going to put everything they have on Jericho's back, let him go to WrestleMania as the world champion, and to develop a new star. It's progress, people.
I think Jeff's pretty adamant about the fact that Chris Jericho probably shouldn't be at WrestleMania, and that's fine. That's your opinion, but I think this panel pretty much agrees that Jericho needs to have at least the opportunity to be there. But we're going to come back and we're going to do our rant, so please stay tuned.
The WWF tag division, and most notably Taz and Spike Dudley. It's like the WWF is like, we're this close to doing something right, but they're just not quite there yet, so I'm just going to help you guys out a little more. I would really like this Taz and Spike team. I think they're going the right direction with them. I think they're kind of playing off how resilient these guys are. More so with Spike, because he doesn't have the tough attitude that Taz does. And they're kind of touching on Taz's toughness, and they kind of played up Monday night. You didn't really see Taz back down at all from the acolytes, so guys who clearly outsize him. I think they need to keep going with Taz and Spike. I think they deserve a long title reign. Hopefully it won't end at No Way Out. I think you can still build up Chuck and Billy. I think you can rebuild the Dudleys, maybe rebuild the Hardys. But I think right now, I can't believe I'm actually saying this about Taz and Spike, but I think they are the centerpiece of your tag division. Now, having said all that, I think it wouldn't be a bad idea maybe give them some mic time, maybe, have an interview building up to a match or a feud or whatever. But I think you're kind of going in the right direction. You just need to take a few more steps.
All right. Well, this past week, last Sunday, to be more exact, was the Super Bowl. And as you know, every year, not only is the tradition of the Super Bowl a thumping by one of the teams, which actually didn't happen this year, but it's the Super Bowl commercials. That's one of the things everybody watches it for. And, you know, and this year, of course, the commercials were subpar. I have no freaking clue what an M Life is, and I don't care. But 2 years ago, the WWF did a commercial, and they did one the year before that. And, you know, while the commercials were relatively well done, they were kind of pointless because the WWF was doing really well at the time. You know, people were flocking to the show every week. And it just sort of seemed like $2 million is sort of crapped away. Well, this year was the year they could have used it. The ratings aren't the greatest. They're not bad, but you know, they're not what they were a year ago. And interest in the product really seems to be dwindling. But they have a major selling point now with the return of one of the most decorated stars in wrestling history, Hulk Hogan, as well as Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And considering they you know, blew the surprise anyway Monday night that these three guys are coming back, I don't see why they didn't just do it a day beforehand and maybe do an edited version of that great video that they did last week to the Kid Rock song. Cut it down a little bit, show some of the big WWF highlights, and splice in that, you know, one of the greatest stars in wrestling history will be returning, trying to destroy the company. If you haven't watched our show in a while, now's the time to come back. You know, this would have been a great year to spend the $2 million to really build that fan base up and get people excited about the NWO again. Because trust from people I talked to on the street, people are excited about this, and they want to know who it is, if it's really these three guys or if it's like, you know, Buff Bagwell and Scott Norton. This would have been money well spent, and I'm just really surprised they didn't think of it sooner.
I was going to afford him the loan, but you know,
yeah,
things are tight this month. I gained a lot of respect for Diamond Dallas Page when he accepted his buyout with Time Warner. I mean, here's a guy who's in his mid to possibly late 40s, and he went ahead and said, I don't want the guaranteed money. I want to go and prove myself in the WWF. And unlike Sting, who's trying to call Daisy Fuentes at home and ask her about Shutter Speed 2, or Goldberg playing the token muscle man on worthless CBS shows, Diamond Dallas Page came back and wanted to prove himself all over again, and I respect him for that. But his WWF career kind of didn't start out the way he wanted it to. He went from being the guy in WCW who could work to the guy in the WWF that could work on Heat. But they're kind of getting back to letting Diamond Dallas Page be himself, and I think it's great that he wants to emulate his character after Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. But it's not meant for wrestling. Diamond Dallas Page has an innate charisma about him, even though he is close to 50 years old. He can still be beneficial to the WWF. I think you're seeing that again with, you know, a not too bad feud with Christian. But again, you're seeing more of those old Diamond Dallas Page tendencies. And I think with the NWO coming back, I think we talked about this earlier in the show, this is a perfect way to bring Diamond Dallas Page back into the fold. I think here's a guy who can still be beneficial as a main event star.
Well said. You mean you don't like the I'm happy, you're happy, me, fi, me, or whatever?
No, not unless he's with Canyon.
Anyway. Well, 2 weeks ago on SmackDown, you saw Ric Flair sign his first name, but didn't sign his last name to in effect, sell his stock over to Vince McMahon. Like the angle. One problem with it. Why did Austin come out? Maybe it's just my blind hatred for The Rock or for Steve Austin. There you see the worthless bastard right there. But the fact is, when Austin came out, yeah, he got the crowd into it. He got the crowd en route for Flair, not signing. Why not have Hunter come out? My God. You could have Hunter come out, cut a great 2-minute long speech about Ric Flair. You're the reason I got into wrestling. I'm not just speaking for me. Guys in the back also. We looked up to you. And now he's hell-bent on calling Vince McMahon his father-in-law, and, well, an ass, and fill in the blank there. Just say something to the effect of, don't let this man, who currently is a whatever, ruin your life. You're Ric Flair. You cannot do this. And the angle did come off well. I have a soft place in my heart for tradition in wrestling. And with Austin, who's currently a joke right now, and watching old tapes from like 97, 98, well, pretty much 97, the old Steve Austin, the one who had something to prove, and this Steve Austin who just wants to sell t-shirts, and that was a hell of a point you brought up, I think it was in your column. It would have meant a lot more if Hunter would have come out, maybe built Flair up a little more. And the thing is, Austin's really not doing anything. Hunter is right now. It wouldn't have hurt. And on a side note here, I'd just like to say that U2 performed one hell of a concert during the Super Bowl at the halftime show. And it was just a far cry from Aerosmith last year, who rely on people like NSYNC and Mary J. Blige and Me Fi Me once again and Color Me Bad to get themselves over because they haven't had a hit since 79 or 75. The fact is, Aerosmith is old. They're a parody of themselves. I don't know why I'm talking about this now. I'm just filling time out. The point is, Aerosmith, my God.
You know, it would have been nice if Austin would have come out and said, this is our company, and if the NWO thinks they can come here and take over, let them try.
If he would have said anything but what, it would have been good.
Right.
That's all he knows how to say.
Well, my column, it's called Sharpshooter. You can read it in the Daily News. It's on newsstands all over the planet. You can read it on the internet, www.dailynewsmckeesport.com. I'm under the columnist section.
If you want to read my column, you can pick it up on the newsstands tomorrow, or you can read it on the web. It's www.triblive.com/sports.
While you're on the internet, go over to prowrestlingreview.com, check out all our pages, our feedback sections. If you want to send us mail, it's prowrestlingreview@lycos.com.
What about the hate mail?
It's I hate PWR at cs.com, and I'm sure we won't get any hate mail this week.
And trivia buffs out there, that question once again, at the 1998 No Way Out, featuring a match with Kane and Big Van Vader. Well, it wasn't known at that. What was the match stipulation? It was a stupid-ass one. Just name the stipulation, answer the 3 on the website, prowrestlingreview.com, and have fun with this one a little bit. Maybe put a little bonus in there for us. That's it.
Like, what does Aerosmith need to get inspired again? We know the answer, but
4 bullets?
well,
Reunion of sorts. Anyway, well, that's this week's show. For me, for Rennie, for Brian, and for Jim. This is the Aerosmith free edition of Pro Wrestling Review, and we will see you next week, where we won't walk this way, people. We'll see you.